Yes, welcome back to the Fantasy Wildcard Rewind show. It is a Thursday night. It's random again. We love doing a random Thursday night. We are here and we're going to get into it.
I just want to rewind to when we were young at heart. Back to all those good times. Take me back to the start.
Yes, the best two from the Wildcard Rewind are here. It is me and Lewis. How are you doing, mate?
Doing very well, thank you, mate. I do agree. It definitely is the best two, and it's always a bit weird recording on a Thursday. I always get ready for you come straight in from the weekend. You got to get through work in Monday, and then here we go back at it for another week. So a Thursday is always a slightly weird one, but all of us had bank holiday stuff going on, so here we are on a little Thursday one.
Yeah, well, we all put our holiday forms into Kev, and he authorised all our holiday forms, but So I'm going to blame Kev, although he had nothing to do with it. But no, yeah, we're all busy on the bank holiday. But yeah, I agree with you. The Thursdays are pretty random. I end up going to work on tomorrow being Friday, thinking, oh, it's only Tuesday. I've still got a whole week to go or something like that. And then it's so yeah, it does play with my head a little bit. But yeah, let's get into it. The big news of the week. Allen Robinson signs with the New York Giants. That's the end of big news.
Can we just change the segment to just news? This isn't big news. It's not even really of the biggest news of this week. It's just some news.
Yeah, I don't even want to call it news, to be honest. Just statement. It's a statement, but
a thing has happened.
Yeah, a thing has happened. The Giants have signed another awful wide receiver. But yeah, right. Let's get right into what we're going to do. Over the next few weeks, we are going to do divisional Is it previews? It's not really previews. It's looking into the divisions and the fantasy implications and who we think stands out in these divisions and stuff. And we're just going to have a couple of questions. Now, the questions were going to be for you and Hannah, but unfortunately, Hannah can't make it tonight. So I will answer all of these questions with you. I'll let you go first, and then I'll answer after. But yeah, we're going to start with the North Division. So we're going to do the AFC and the NFC North, and we're going to chat about each position. We'll chat about the players in these positions and whatnot, and we'll get into some sort of discussion with these. But we're going to start with the QBs of the AFC division. Now, this QB division is made up of Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Lord Voldemort himself, and a mess. And that is the Pittsburgh Steelers QB room. I think when I was writing this show sheet, I genuinely thought, what do I sort of ask about these players? Because I genuinely feel we could speak for an hour about these four players. Well, these five, because there's two at the Steelers, isn't there? So I've got a couple of questions. Now, I may ask more, I may not. But Lewis, who do you think starts for the Steelers week 1? And if you think the other one is going to come in, at what point do you think the other one comes in and takes over that starting role?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident, and I think we should all be pretty confident that it's going to be Russell Wilson starting out the season. And I think that's what the team wants to do. They obviously acquired Russ first, right? So Justin Fields was available for a trade for the entire offseason. And then free agency happened, and every team that wanted a backup quarterback or a new starter went and got their guy. And then eventually, Justin Fields ended up going to the Steelers for I think it's a fifth that can become a third. But it's all lots of conditional picks. When people were saying, maybe they'll get a late first for him, that was obviously never going to happen. But maybe a second, we thought maybe the Falcons could send the second. So obviously, when you say every team went out and got their new starter, that includes the Steelers. Like, the Steelers knew Justin Fields was available and went and got Russell Wilson instead when the Broncos cut him. That said, I don't think Russ is going to have a hugely long leash, because I think the Steelers under Mike Tomlin are always a win now team. And it normally means getting bounced in the first round of the playoffs, but they always want to go and win. And they definitely always want to make playoffs. So I feel like if there's a little bit of a rough stretch for Russ, we could potentially start to see Justin Fields get used. But I think it's more likely that we see him in specific packages early on, in a quite a similar way to how he was when he was a first a rookie in Chicago, with Andy Dalton as well. But I would be very surprised if it's not Russell Wilson starting out the season. He actually didn't play that badly in Denver, especially last season. Although a lot of it really came down to kind of throwing deep or dumping it off. But 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions in 15 games is actually pretty good. In terms of when I think it'll change over, I can see them giving Justin Fields a chance around a double-digit week. So 10, 11, 12, somewhere around there, or if there's any injury with Russ. But I actually wouldn't be hugely surprised if this is just Russell Wilson's team. Like I say, like the Steelers had the chance to go out and get Justin Fields, didn't, and then ended up doing it when the price was discounted. Just because there's a cheese and ham sandwich available in the discounted range doesn't mean you'd have bought it for your premium meal deal when it's £3.50. If you can get it for £1.50 later in the day, maybe you'll give it a go.
Oh, unfortunately, Tesco's are not a sponsor, Lewis. Even though you nailed that, let's be honest. Yeah, it's hard to disagree with you there, to be honest, with what you're saying about they had the opportunity to bring Justin Fields in. They didn't. They went and got Russell Wilson and then brought Justin Fields in. I think Justin Fields is potentially a really, really cheap sort of backup, because they're not actually spent that much on him. And if he doesn't pan out, it's cheap to get out of it and stuff like that, instead of investing heavily on him. Now, I do think that Justin Fields does play. And I don't want to be one of these guys that's like, oh, yeah, he's a league winner. But I think if Justin Fields can come into this team sort of week 10 and you've got him on your bench, I think that, he could be somebody this year. He's an injury away from being a starting QB, and I think it's better than that. I don't think he's an injury away. I think he does start as a QB towards the end of the season, and I do think he's going to be that waiver wire pickup that everyone's going to go and pick up. So to me, I think he's going to be somebody that I'm targeting towards the end of drafts. If he's still there, I'm going to take him, knowing that he can come up, and we all know what he can do if he gets to rush the ball. And the Steelers this year have made that O-line better.
Yeah.
And, they have invested in that. Now, if you've got Justin Fields there and Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, do they maybe utilize him like that, So,
yeah, I can definitely see it. I think the interesting thing for me, because Justin Fields, it's the same as with Trey Lance, and even not to say he's a similar player, but Anthony Richardson last year, that with these rushing quarterbacks, the moment they're on the field, they're a QB1. And Trey Lance was pretty awful, maybe the biggest draft bust of all time. But when he played in fantasy, he was good because he rushes the ball, and that's the crucial thing. I'd be interested to know with Justin Fields, would you consider drafting him in a redraft league, or would you rather let someone else take him and then let him hit waivers after a few weeks? Would you be comfortable drafting him knowing that you're probably going to have to stash him for the majority of the season?
I'd rather take the risk. Like we both said, I think he plays. And I play with a lot of degenerates, as you do, in these leagues, and a lot of people will listen to the advice. They're not going to listen to my advice, but they will listen to advice from people that will be like, he is somebody that you can hold on to, and they're not new to this game. They know sometimes you need to stash and stuff like that. So, like I said, if I don't know, say I'm in a 20 20 round draft. If I'm getting to round 19, all I'm picking up then is people that have got the probability to become something. Now, if I think Justin Fields is going to play, he's got that probability to become something. And like you said, if he steps on that field and he's the starting quarterback, he's a quarterback one straight away. You know,
Yeah.
he's got the rushing upside and stuff. So I don't know.
I was probably going to say that. So my opinion generally has been that I wouldn't draft him and that I'll let him hit waivers after a few weeks. But the thing is with Fields, and I'm saying this not as a huge Fields believer. The thing is with Fields, he is an early Russell Wilson injury away from having the upside to finish as the QB1. And who else that you're going to get around that sort of range is going to have that sort of upside? So his current ADP is going at 170 overall, which is what, midway through the 14th, back of the 14th, early 15th. So who else that you're getting at that range has the potential to finish at the number one overall in their position? I'm going to say the answer is probably no one.
He's somebody I'd definitely look at. If I took safe QBs, you know what I mean? And I took a couple of QBs and I was like, right, I'm quite safe with them. He would be my risky QB4 then. He'd be, do you know what? I've got 3 really safe, really vanilla style QBs that are going to, you know, not going to score me that 25-point week or something. You know, it's going to be set like 15 to 20 every week around that mark. And then Justin Fields can come in and bam, take me to a championship, baby.
I don't hate it. Yeah, I don't hate it. Definitely shooting for upside.
Yeah. But quick one for you now. And I agree with the way that you've done this as well. So my next question was going to be, how do you rank these in redraft this year? And so I agree with you. So how do you rank them?
Yeah, this is pretty easy to me. Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. Lamar Jackson's easy. I think there's an argument to take him as the QB1. Joe Burrow is going around the 6th, which I don't hate. He's actually taken a little bit of a discount after the injury, and he's really easy to stack with Chase and Higgins. I'm not going to draft any Deshaun Watson, partly because I don't want to have to root for him, but partly because I don't think he's very good. And then Russ and Fields we've spoken through already.
Just so I said I was going to ask more questions. Do you think this is the last chance for Watson? I don't know. I can't remember how many years he's got left on his contract, but do you think they're getting to that point now where they're going, you know, you need to do something? Or are we looking at this from a fantasy perspective and going, actually, you're not a good QB for fantasy, but in the NFL, because I believe he took the Browns to the playoffs last year, didn't he?
Well,
Or
Joe Flacco took the Browns to the playoffs.
Flacco took him, yeah, because he was injured. But you know what I mean? Is it last chance saloon?
So had he been given any contract other than his current one? Yes. The problem is he was given a 6-year, £230 million deal, fully guaranteed. So he's actually fully guaranteed money through 2026. If they were to cut him today, their dead money would be nearly their entire cap. The dead money to cut him today would be $200 million. So yes, I agree. I think they might. He'll have this season. If it doesn't work out, they might find a way to get rid of the contract and see if they can, you know, send their first to someone along with Deshaun Watson, like maybe someone like the Giants or someone that will be QB needy next year. But I think, to be honest, I think they've made a massive mess with this one, and they're going to struggle to get out of it because he's fully guaranteed through 2026, so 3 more seasons.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how long he had left. I was hoping that it was only going to be like 2 years, and sort of after this year, it'd be like, do you know what? If we cut him, we cut him. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's chat some running backs. So sticking with the AFC. The AFC North Division. So you've got Derrick Henry coming into the Ravens. You've got Joe Mixon leaving. You've got Nick Chubb coming back from a really tough injury. and you got split backfield at the Steelers with Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. So my question for you is, which of the Steelers running backs would you prefer to draft?
Yeah, I think this is quite a tough one. And actually, I was facing this on the clock in a best ball draft earlier today. So when you look at last season, they finished as so Jalen Warren was the RB22, Najee Harris was the RB23. We know that they are going to be very split in terms of who gets the rushing work and who gets the receiving work. So I think that's the big thing for me, is which of those would you rather take? Would you rather take kind of the dependable blodder who's going to get you 3.5 yards a carry but get 300 carries, or would you rather take the kind of lightning in a bottle off the bench backup who is going to be explosive plays and receiving work? And to me, I take Jalen Warren. I just think it's about upside, and when you're drafting later down the board, because both of these are going sort of around that 7th, 8th round, I believe, and are going back to back as well. I would rather take Jalen Warren, even though they've brought in Arthur Smith, who obviously had a huge amount of success with Derrick Henry, so with that bigger back archetype. But to me, it's just about the way that you want to, when the cost is the same, the way that you want to put together your team, whether it's about looking for a dependable player or looking for a huge amount of upside. It's kind of the same question as when we had Zeke and Tony Pollard a few years ago, that you had, or even back to Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler, the year that they played together on the Chargers. It's about which style are you looking for, and I think I'll always take the receiving back.
Oh yeah, 100%. And let's be honest, most leagues that we play in now are all like PPR and everything like that. So the receiving back is worth more. Now, if you'd have asked me this question a month ago, I'd have told you Jalen Warren because he's so much cheaper. I think now Jalen Warren is climbing up everyone's boards, and I honestly think before the end of sort of the summer, you'll see them two flipped, and because everyone has got this same sort of opinion that they go for Jalen Warren because he's the one with the upside, like you just explained. And he's creeping up now, and he's back to back with Najee Harris. It's going to get to the point where I'm going to start taking Najee Harris because he's going to be the cheaper back, So I think at the moment I'm in agreement with you that it is Jalen Warren. I don't like the fact that you mentioned Arthur Smith and how well he did with Derrick Henry, because as we all seen last year with Bijan, he doesn't know how to use him, and we all hate him. So please don't mention Arthur Smith's name on my show ever again.
on your show,
on my show, I realized I said that. I was like, wow. But yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's Jalen Warren and then Najee Harris, but I will always take the cheaper running back if I can, So I'd rather wait. If I could wait a couple of picks and then get Najee a bit later in a month or so, then that's what I'd be doing.
Nice.
So the other like running backs that I wanted to talk about is and I don't really feel like many people are talking about this team at the moment, and when you talk about running backs with workload and they've got everything like this, I don't think any of these are really being mentioned. So at the Bengals, you've got Zach Moss, Chase Brown, Travion Williams, and Captain America himself, Chris Evans. Is there anyone that you fancy from this running back room? And if so, why is it Captain America?
It's not Captain America or the UK radio host. It's it's not, and it's not Travion Williams either. So Chase Brown and Zach Moss are both interesting players for me. Zach Moss obviously had a really good stretch last season when Jonathan Taylor was injured, but also when Jonathan Taylor was back as well. So he finished as the RB31 overall. But the 7-game stretch to open the season, RB10, RB5, RB27, RB2, RB7, 30, 15. So started really well when he had that bell cow role. Chase Brown is a player that a lot of people and sort of analytics and dynasty darlings have been quite into for a while. And he did actually show a decent amount last season. I mean, he was a rookie last season. So, that's the only chance he's had. He finishes the RB 63 overall, but down the stretch he had an RB 10 finish, where he scored a touchdown and it was a huge receiving touchdown as well.
I was going to say it was a big play, that one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. So there's definitely something there with him. I think so. So when I put together my notes on this, I was interested in Chase Brown for the receiving work. But as I talk through it, I think Zach Moss is going to be the one getting the majority of the early work. And then when you look at, Joe Burrow does check the ball down. Joe Mixon always had a decent amount. But with the options that they've got in the receiving game, I think maybe Zach Moss is the higher upside pick just because it's a much better offense than the Steelers. So there's going to be more red zone chances. And he's the bigger back to get into the end zone as well. So actually, maybe Zach Moss here would be the one that I would look to take. I'm just going to have a look at their ADPs as well, just to see where they're going, because I think they're going relatively close to each other. No, there's a fair bit. It's RB 30 for Zach Moss and RB 37 for Chase Brown, which is a consensus across 4 different best ball sites. So there's a little bit in between them, but not drastic. That's like a round ahead of each other.
But it screams value to me at the moment. When I was looking into this, I was making a show sheet. I was trying to figure out questions and stuff, and I looked into this, and I was like literally nobody's talking about the Bengals running back room or anything like that. And we always talk about players that have that opportunity, and one of these is going to see the field a lot. They're in a high-powered offense that can move the ball. They can score. Don't get me wrong. Joe Burrow likes to sling the ball, and he's going to throw it down there, and Jamar Chase will catch it somewhere, And they are like that. But like you said, there's a lot of red zone opportunity. There's going to be a lot of rushing touchdowns, a lot of everything. So, and you're talking about running back 30. You can get a running back on a Bengals offense as running back 30 on the season.
Yeah.
Or in drafts and stuff. And you're going, you know what? That's screaming value for me. Screaming value. I'd be quite happy with him as like my running back 2 or 3 in my team. If I can pick that up at running, as like the RB 30 off the board, I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, that's looking around kind of the 9th round as well. So you could quite easily, Zach Moss would be a prime target for like a hero RB strategy that you take CMC early on, then load up on wide receivers, tight ends, maybe even end up with Joe Burrow as well. And then take Zach Moss as your RB2 later on down the board. Could be a nice little tactic.
Yeah, very much so. But yeah, let's move on to the wide receivers. I'm not going to read out all the wide receivers because there are loads in this. So we're going back to the Steelers. Are there any Steeler wide receivers that you like the look of? And if so, does the QB play a role in who you're choosing and why you're choosing them?
Yes, and a little bit. So I was quite in on George Pickens as a prospect. He was my wide receiver 4 in that class. And then have sort of what?
All Pickens rule.
Yeah. And do you know, I'd never spotted that. Is he your brother? You look quite different.
We're not related.
And yeah, so I've always been, I was quite in on him, and then I sort of soured on him in the league, especially with the attitude problems. But now he's, the only wide receiver on the depth chart, really. So obviously they've gone and got Roman Wilson in the 3rd round, who was a prospect that I'm not hugely keen on. They got Van Jefferson, previously of the Rams, and still Calvin Austin, who's a deep threat. Pickens is kind of the clear alpha there, and profiles really well as a match for Russ as well. In terms of Russ Wilson still throws an absolutely beautiful moon ball. We saw Cortland Sutton come down with a few last year. We've seen DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett come down with 1 million. And George Pickens is a contested catch threat, so he does fit in really well with Russell Wilson. So I'd definitely be interested in him. It doesn't really bother me when Justin Fields comes in, or if Justin Fields comes in, because I think Pickens is so clearly the wide receiver to go to, that I think that there's just such a dearth of options behind him that he's going to end up having overwhelming volume. I also like Van Jefferson. I've seen the kind of player he can be. He actually had a 700 to 800-yard season. I think either in his rookie season or sophomore season with the Rams. So he has that sort of upside. And on an empty depth chart, he's a very reliable, versatile target. Not the best catcher of the ball I've ever seen. But with nothing else around him, there's definitely a chance for him to produce, and he's probably going undrafted at the minute. So I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of finds his way into flex relevancy. Roman Wilson, not so much. No, I think there's a chance he does work himself into flex relevancy, but wasn't a player I particularly liked when I scouted.
It's quite a big call, that, because rookie wide receivers are it's quite rare to see them have an impact and make an effect in year one, and you're sort of thinking he can make it into a flex play. That's quite I quite like that one. That's quite a bold one. But that'll bring us on to our next question, and pick a sleeper from this division, somebody who you think is not on anyone's radar, and he could turn out to be something and somebody.
Yeah, well, this is a player who probably is on people's radars now. And this is someone that I've spoken about before when we did our wide receiver preview show, who is someone I absolutely adored as a prospect, but has some attitude issues. I think this is when we had Jack on from the Devi show, and we gushed about Jermaine Burton. So Burton is a fantastic athlete, a fantastic route runner, has really good hands, really twitchy, both quick and fast, like can work over the top, can work underneath, and never really put it together, despite being at Alabama, which is the place that wide receivers normally put it all together, and also has some off the field issues as well. He is so talented. If you were just ranking rookie wide receivers on ceiling outcomes alone, he's definitely a top 5 wide receiver in the class, like arguably a top 2. It could arguably be Marvin Harrison Jr. and then Jermaine Burton, just in terms of like what the ceiling could be. And I was really interested to see where he went, because I thought there was a chance that lots of franchises didn't have him on their boards at all. And then he went in the 3rd round to the Bengals, who are obviously probably losing T. Higgins next year. Definitely already lost Tyler Boyd, and he was who they brought in as their number 3 option. So I think we can probably expect to see him win that starting slot role. He's very versatile, so I'd profile him more as a Z, but I think he can probably start in the slot because he's a good enough route runner and he's very twitchy in short areas as well. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him not so much explode, but like be relevant straight away if the wide receiver coach and you know the offensive coaching staff can screw his head on right. I think he's got all the upside in the world, and he definitely was a bit quieter earlier in the season, and then I think basically everyone started watching tape, and then everyone started going, "Oh my god, look at this guy!" But he's going as the wide receiver 79 at the minute, so you can get him right at the back end of your draft. And if they come out week 1 and Charlie Jones is the starting slot, then you can cut him and you can forget about him. But I think there's a world in which he wins that job, and there's enough passing volume in that offense that he'll be able to make something of it as well.
I love it. What did you say? Wide receiver 79?
Yeah.
Oh, now that's a sleeper for you. That is. That's a deep one. That is. I like that one. I like that one.
You asked me for a sleeper. I gave you a sleeper.
Yeah. I love it when you're deep.
Boys show. It's the boys show today.
Right. Sorry. I've thrown myself off here. Right. So I didn't come up with a sleeper because I was hosting and I posted this question to you and Hannah. So catch my sleepers when we do more, and I'm not hosting. But we're going to move on to the tight ends. So we've the tight ends in this division. We've got Mark Andrews and Pat Freiermuth. They're the ones that really stand out for me. Are there any other tight ends in this sort of division that you'd be happy to draft at all?
Yeah, David Njoku's the other one. And the tough thing with him is that he exploded late down the season, but it wasn't with Deshaun Watson. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of regression from that. But I'd definitely be quite happy with him as my tight end one and see if he's developed as a player or if it was just a Joe Flacco thing. Because he had multiple double-digit target games. The Bengals, we've all got lulled into the trap of the Bengals tight end for the last few seasons when it was Irv Smith Jr. I think they had Hayden Hurst for a bit, and it never really seems to work out. So this year, the Bengals tight end trap is Mike Gesicki, but there's just not enough. There's not enough passing volume to sustain Chase Higgins, potentially a few other wide receivers, running backs out of the backfield, and a not very good tight end as well. Gesicki athletically is the best tight end they've had for a while. So if it is going to work out with a low cost tight end on the Bengals, it might as well be him. But I don't think I'm hugely interested in drafting him. Saying that, I did draft him earlier today, but that was because I had a best ball team. I was drafting on DraftKings and had Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, and then figured when it got to my last pick that I'd throw Mike Gesicki in there just for like a mega stack. But it was just I think if you have Joe Burrow, like draft Mike Gesicki, but I think more in best ball than in redraft than in managed leagues.
Yeah, I think in redraft, I don't think he's somebody that I want to have that headache and try and figure out if I want him. David Njoku, yeah, I think you listen to Kev a lot. Kev loves David Njoku, you know. But yeah, I think I don't know if I'd be happy with Njoku as my tight end one. I think I'd prefer to go maybe a little bit earlier and get somebody a little bit more reliable and somebody that I'd quite like. So
yeah, it's the range I found where I've been drafting already. That's the range that I really don't like taking tight end, is when you start getting to like Dallas Goedert, David Njoku, Cole Kmet, and I'm like,
lots of question marks.
yeah, I don't feel great about taking a tight end here. I'd almost always rather get someone a bit earlier or just take Hannah's favorite player, K. Dot, on like right at the end, just punt tight end completely.
Yeah. So, right, we're going to move on to the NFC North division now. And we're going to start with the QBs again. So, the QBs over at the NFC North at the moment are Jared Goff, Jordan Love. I know I put JJ McCarthy, but it could be Sam Darnold on week one. But we'll say JJ McCarthy and Caleb Williams. So, let's talk about these rookies as if we hadn't done that already this season. Which one do you think does better year one? Are we Caleb Williams or are we JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, this is an outstanding division for quarterbacks and also Jared Goff, who's fine. He's fine. He's fine.
Do not slander Jared Goff, okay?
I've had Lions fans in my mentions
He's
before.
Kirk Cousins, just better.
He's Kirk Cousins, just taller.
Yeah, all he is a really good QB too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like there's an argument that this could be the best divisions, or potentially the best division for quarterbacks if JJ McCarthy and Caleb Williams become what we think they will, which should be quite exciting. When it comes to the two of them for this season, so if you just look at the ADPs, like it reflects people's opinions on them. So Caleb Williams is already going at QB 14, ahead of Tua, ahead of Trevor Lawrence, ahead of Kirk Cousins. Then JJ McCarthy isn't going all the way down until QB 28, with Sam Darnold going at QB 34. For me, I mean, I did want to touch upon the fact that like these two, we've spoken about this before, they have the best situations of not only any rookie quarterback this year, with obviously 6 going in the first round, but maybe any rookie quarterback in the last 5 years. I know you brought up Trey Lance. But I think there's certainly an argument with these two, with the weapons in front of them, with the offensive lines in front of them, in investments made at wide receiver, offensive. Well, there's an offensive head coach in Minnesota and a good offensive coordinator in Chicago. So they've definitely both fallen into good situations. I think for me, Caleb Williams is going to start day one. They're not going to start Tyson Bagent. JJ McCarthy, I wouldn't be surprised. He was a very raw prospect. I wouldn't be surprised if they intend on starting Sam Darnold for a few games. If it's me, I'd rather throw him out there to the Wolves and let him develop on the field. But I know different quarterbacks work different ways with that sort of thing. So some quarterbacks really thrive on just learning on the job. Some quarterbacks really don't. So it depends whether he wants to hold the clipboard for Sam Darnold for a few weeks or whether he just wants to dive straight in. But when it comes to 2024, I would bet a lot of money on Caleb Williams finishing higher than JJ McCarthy, just because, I mean, he's a better prospect anyway, but Caleb Williams starts day one and JJ McCarthy probably doesn't.
So you know what I'm going to do now, don't you? Okay,
No.
So the same question. JJ McCarthy starts day one, guaranteed.
Still Caleb Williams, I think, just
Still
because
Caleb
I think I think he's a better prospect and a cleaner prospect for year one. Obviously, I mean, definite argument of whose weapons you'd rather have. When you have on one side,
definitely JJ McCarthy's weapons.
Yeah,
100%.
So I think I do think it's an argument. Like, I know Justin Jefferson's on one side. I know you've got the best wide receiver in football, but you're 3 deep at wide receiver on the other side, which I do think makes a big difference as well. And with a lot more variance as well. Like, I think I suppose the answer is that it doesn't matter where Justin Jefferson is, you can always throw it to him. But I think, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore all fit together really nicely. Whereas Jordan Addison, I profile slightly differently to JJ, but they are missing something from that offense. Whereas I think the Bears trio, and there's an argument they could be the best trio in football.
Ooh. Well, better than Puka and Cooper Kupp and,
That's the point. And
the other one, what's his name?
Demarcus Robinson or Tutu Atwell. Like that. That's
Tutu Atwell. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, you'll find loads of situations where you're like, yeah, but Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, yeah, and OBJ, like, or Devonta Smith and AJ Brown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hang on. Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and OBJ. You'd have that over DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Odunze, wouldn't you?
I don't think I would, because I don't know what OBJ is these days. He's not played.
Yeah.
If it's OBJ, if we're talking in 2016, then maybe.
What, when he did that one-handed catch?
Like, yeah, but Jalen Waddle's going to be about 11 years old. So, yeah, I'd take the Bears wide receiver trio over the Dolphins wide receiver trio.
Fair enough. I think I agree with you. I think Caleb Williams does have a better season. But if I'm honest, to a fantasy perspective with this now, I think I'd take them both. I say take them both. I definitely take JJ McCarthy because I think he's good value at like QB 27 or something like that. Caleb Williams, you're probably at the point where I really question myself if I'm going to pull the trigger. I will have a league somewhere where I do take him at that point, so I've got a share of him if he does hit. But, we're talking about putting him above Trevor Lawrence. We're talking about Tua. We're talking Jared Goff. Was it Jared Goff? He said he's gone before Kirk Cousins. All of these.
Goff is actually going quite early. Goff is going as QB 12.
See, I'm all over that.
Yeah. For a QB 12 for a ceiling of QB 11.
Yeah, nailed it.
And a floor of QB 13. So
safe. This is what I was saying earlier, though. If I've got a couple of safe QBs, then I would reach for something like Justin Fields. But the same question again. You got these 4 QBs. I'm going off the basis that JJ McCarthy is predominantly the starter at the Vikings more than Sam Darnold is. But how would you rank these in terms of fantasy?
Yeah,
And why is
I
Jared Goff your best your number one QB?
he's not, unfortunately. And look, like I think I'm acting like I hate Jared Goff, and I don't. I really like him. Like I really respect him for
Could have
what he did.
fooled me.
Yeah, I'm making it out like I'm a hater. I think I'm just still sore about the Lions knocking us out of the playoffs. I I would rank them: Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, Jared Goff, JJ McCarthy.
See, we differ a lot here.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I put Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams.
really. What's the thinking on Goff then? What do you see in Goff that makes you think that he can
I
finish
just
above?
really like Goff. I just really like Goff. I think so. I think it's more. It's not so much my. I think Jared Goff is a phenomenal player. It's more. I think everyone is like more in love with Jordan Love than what I am.
Yeah,
I have no love for Love, if I'm honest. Um, and it's just I don't know. I don't know if people are seeing something that I'm not seeing and stuff like this, but people are like, "Oh my god, Jordan Love is the best thing ever! Oh, he was a round one pick. He sat behind Aaron Rodgers for so long. Now look at him and everything like this." And I'm going like, that Packers team scraped through a lot of games last year, and there was,
yeah,
it. I was watching it. And I was like, he's not set the world alight for me, but people are talking about him as if like he's the next Messiah in Green Bay or something, And I don't know. I've just got no love for him, and that's my hatred for him. But I also think that Caleb Williams is, as much as we say we like the landing spot and the weapons he's got there and everything like that, the Bears are still not a great team,
they're still the Bears. Yeah,
defensively and stuff like that. And I just worry that the Bears are going to do Bears things, and all of a sudden you're 4 or 5 games in, they're still struggling to put together a good win and everything like that. And Caleb Williams, like fantasy outlook, is going to struggle because of that. But yet the community do this every year with rookies, and they go, "Oh my god, he's going to be amazing!" Put them in, and then
yeah,
realize that actually the rookies don't really do. They don't do what Puka Nakua did last year. They don't turn
yeah.
up and break records and everything like that. And QBs, they struggle year one, and then So I just think I'd have an open mind with it. But I think for this year, I think Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy. But
Interesting.
right, let's fly on to the running backs. So it's a duo sort of league, this, isn't it? Everyone's got duo. So we've got David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs at the Lions. We've got DeAndre Swift and Khalil Herbert at the Bears. We've got Josh Jacobs and AJ Dillon at the Packers. And then we've got Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler at the Vikings. Which duo would you prefer to own? And which way would you draft that duo?
Yeah, I do feel a little bit like Ty Chandler and AJ Dillon are kind of imposters in that list, especially because I think there's a chance AJ Dillon actually doesn't make the roster, having taken Marshawn Lloyd in the third in the last draft, and AJ Dillon is bad.
You can't just drop Quadzilla.
Right, if he wants to gain like £100 and play offensive lineman, then maybe those quads will be good for something. But at the minute, they're not doing a huge amount. Do you remember a couple of summers ago? It might have even been 3 seasons ago. I think it was 2, where it looked like Aaron Jones was leaving, and AJ Dillon became the hottest thing in Dynasty. And then, like 2 days later, the Packers announced they re-signed Aaron Jones. And there was that bit where people were like, AJ Dillon's either going to be super valuable or worth next to nothing. And then, like that little bit where he was like the hottest thing in Dynasty.
I remember arguing with somebody, and I've got a feeling it's Liam, the FSA tweets. I'm sure me and him had a disagreement about it, like we always do. Me and Liam always disagree about everything. I love our little bond that we've got. We disagree and debate everything. And I'm sure it was him that was like blowing AJ Dillon's trumpet, and I was like, nope, no, not feeling
Yep.
it, not feeling it, and then Aaron Jones comes back, and it's like, yep, and you just watched him plummet. AJ
Yep.
Dillon's values just plummeted,
Yep.
and bless him, quad still.
But yes, it's the Lions duo. Like, and I don't think it's particularly close. I can't really work out what to do with the lead backs on the other franchises. Josh Jacobs has never been someone that I'm hugely into, even though I think he's going to get 1 million carries this year. Aaron Jones is still, a lightning in a bottle, even though he's 29 or 30 now. DeAndre Swift, I've never been hugely into. But Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, like, I can see an argument. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is the RB1 in the division. David Montgomery's what? The RB4? RB5? Like, I could see an argument. I can see the argument if you wanted to take him above Jacobs or Jones. I probably wouldn't do it. I'd take him as the RB4 above DeAndre Swift. But to me, it's the Lions. They have the best offensive line. Jahmyr Gibbs was absolutely fantastic last season. And finished as RB10. I did some work into rookie running backs in the off season and looking at the way they score their points. And basically, if you scored less than 30% of your points from touchdowns as a rookie running back, you tended to repeat the next season. I can't remember the exact statistics, which he did. But the really scary thing is that it doesn't, he still didn't have the biggest workload. We still spent a lot of weeks going, can we not get more from him? Like, he had 71 targets and 182 rushing attempts last season. With the lack of a wide receiver 2 beyond Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously they've got Sam Laporta at tight end, but with the lack of a wide receiver 2, Jahmyr Gibbs can be the wide receiver 2. There's no reason he can't get 100 targets this season. He has RB1 ceiling. So it's pretty easy for me to take the Lions duo.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. I'd take the Lions one. I do like that that Bears room. I am a big fan of DeAndre Swift. I will be honest. I am a bit of a Swiftie. But yeah, I think Josh Jacobs is somebody I will draft quite a lot of this year. I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of him, but actually the workload that he's going to get, if he's going to keep seeing the ball, he's easy for me. He's an easy flex play, then, isn't he? Somebody that's going to keep bagging you in the points up. To me, I think the sneaky play here is Aaron Jones. I think he can walk into this Vikings room. I was out on Aaron Jones last year, didn't like him. He proved me wrong, and I quite like him at the Vikings. I think the Vikings like to use their running backs in different ways, and I think he kind of fits that mold of what they want. He's quite similar to sort of like that Dalvin Cook kind of player, isn't he? And I think he quite fit in there quite nicely. So I do kind of like Aaron Jones at the Vikings this year, and I don't really think there's much competition behind him, So yeah, I think he's my sneaky play there. But yeah, let's move on to the wide receivers. So this was quite a simple question. I'm not going to list all the wide receivers again because there's way too many. But why don't you give me the top 5 fantasy wide receivers, your top 5 fantasy wide receivers from this division? Because there are a lot of good wide receivers, yeah?
Yeah, there's loads of them. So to me, Justin Jefferson is still the clear one. It's very close between him and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And obviously the quarterback play, we have a lot more confidence in this season for Amon-Ra. So I do think it's very close, but I'd still go with Justin Jefferson. After Amon-Ra, Keenan Allen, then DJ Moore. That's the way round that I have it currently. I think Keenan Allen was absolutely fantastic last season. And I don't think people are talking enough because he was injured down the stretch about how good he was. And I think with Caleb Williams, he's going to get 140, 150 targets. So I take him over DJ Moore. As wide receiver 5, I went Jaden Reed, who I think is the wide receiver 1 on the Packers. Had a really stunning rookie season. Obviously, the Packers are loaded at wide receiver, but all with like wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 types. So it's Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. So I think he'll still be kind of the alpha in that offense. But it means that, didn't get onto the list. Jordan Addison, Roma Dunze. There's not really anyone else notable on the Lions, and then all of those players from the Packers. So an absolutely loaded division at wide receiver.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable one, really. When you look at the names, like straight away, like you said, Jordan Anderson didn't make the list. So I agree with you. Justin Jefferson, it's hard to not put him as the one, really, isn't it? Because of what he can do. I fear for him this year because of JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold are going to be his QBs, and I do feel that he may. The talent's still there. He's still going to catch balls, but I don't know if it's going to be as productive as what we could see be a wide receiver, finish as wide receiver one. Because ultimately, that's what you're drafting Justin Jefferson for. You drafted him to be wide receiver one on the season, and there's a good chance that he doesn't finish. There's a good chance, or you could argue that he doesn't finish in the top 3 this year. So I get why you've put him there. Amon-Ra, again, I think you're splitting hairs between them two. You could see, Amon-Ra's got the ability to finish the season as the wide receiver 1. He's also got the ability to finish the season as the wide receiver 5. I think he's just somebody like that, isn't he? He's somebody that could be either. I get your theory behind Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. I think they're both good to put there. But the Packers is the one I wanted to get to. Jayden Reed here. I like the way that you've picked Jayden Reed, but I think that room is such a question mark. I think any one of them could be, how many times last year did we see Christian Watson have a good week and it was like, oh, he's going to be the guy. And then like a couple of weeks later, it's somebody else and, oh, he's going to be the guy and stuff. And I just think I think you kind of have to take an educated guess with the Green Bay Packers wide receiver room. I think I'd like to take a share of one of them in each sort of draft, just to sort of cover that. Whichever one of them hits, it'll hit quite well. But I don't know. Go on.
I think it was best ball I think it was DFS in the playoffs that everyone was going for Green Bay wide receivers against Dallas in the wildcard round, and in the end everyone got it wrong because everyone was going Jayden Reed, and Romeo Doubs went for 151 yards and a touchdown and ended up finishing as like the top wide receiver. Although I think actually CeeDee Lamb outscored him, but like everyone was targeting Packers wide receivers and we all got it wrong. And I think that's what it's going to continue to be for the whole season. So as much as I love Jayden Reed, as much as I think he'll finish very well, I think I'll probably go the other way. And as opposed to getting a share of each one of them in different leagues, I'll probably just avoid that wide receiver room and take players that I know are going to be a bit more consistent.
Or just go for the cheaper ones.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If Jayden Reed's going quite early, I don't know what the ADPs are, but if you could pick up Romeo Doubs sort of 3-4 rounds later and have that sort of risk of him, I think I'd be quite keen to do that, to be honest.
Yeah, so it's currently Jayden Reed, wide receiver 33, Christian Watson, wide receiver 43, Romeo Doubs, wide receiver 51, Dontavian Wicks, wide receiver 67. So I think Doubs could definitely be the value there.
Yeah, he's the value, and I know we sort of say, oh yeah, I always go for the cheaper player, but actually, when you get to the start of the draft, go for the most expensive. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've heard your top 5, Lewis. Now, who's your sleeper? Who's a guy that you could pick up later on and hope that they do something?
I struggled with this one. So I looked a little bit into so the Bears at wide receiver, there's no sleeper because we know the top 3. The Packers, like you could argue Dontavian Wicks, but I wanted to go for someone that people aren't talking about currently. So it really came down to then who's going to be the wide receiver 3 on the Vikings or the wide receiver 2 on the Lions. Vikings, Brandon Powell used to play for the Rams, but is never going to have a huge amount of consistency. They've signed N'Keal Harry, previous first round pick of the Patriots, but no. I looked into it with the Lions because Josh Reynolds was quite relevant last year, and they traded for Donovan Peoples-Jones. Now, he barely did anything last season, but I am historically not a huge believer in Jameson Williams. And Jameson Williams is the wide receiver 2 currently on the Lions, but I think he's only going to play his way out to that spot. They didn't take anyone in the draft. They only had 6 picks. It's been a loaded wide receiver class. People thought that could be, they could be a decent landing spot needing a wide receiver 2. Didn't take one. So potentially Donovan Peoples-Jones could show something and end up being a bit more relevant than we think. Khalif Raymond's the other one, but he's more of a returner than anything else. But I just basically what I'm saying is it's an argument against Jameson Williams more than it's an argument for Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yeah, and I quite like that pick, and I quite like your theory there. Again, I haven't got a sleeper because I set the show sheet. So we'll move on to tight ends. So you've got Sam Laporta and TJ Hawkinson as your sort of standout tight ends here. Is there anyone else that you'd kind of like?
Not hugely. So I quite liked Cole Kmet last year, and he actually finished pretty well. He actually had a pretty decent season. And he's going, we mentioned him earlier because he's going around that same sort of range of where I'm not entirely certain about taking a tight end. So we finished as a tight end 8, finished between 7th and 9th in amongst tight ends in targets, catches, and receiving yards. But finished 5th in red zone targets and 2nd amongst all tight ends with 6 touchdowns. So that's great for him. And you'd think they're getting an upgrade in the passing game with Caleb Williams. But the problem is they have brought in Keenan Allen-Romidunze. So even though he's still the established tight end 1, though they did bring in Gerald Everett as well, I think the fact that they've brought in 2 wide receivers who are good red zone threats, Romidunze especially, because obviously when it was DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, and Cole Kmet, well, he's the only one with any size. But now they've brought in 2 other wide receivers who are both about 6'3", 6'4", and I don't think I'm hugely keen on him. Then when you look at the Packers, again, we've just been talking about how they're so deep at wide receiver, and that really tells me there's not going to be a huge amount of room for. So they had Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave as rookies last season. Incredibly young offense. But I just would never feel confident enough to pick the right one. And I just don't think they're going to get the volume to be hugely relevant. So I think, to me, I'll probably have a few shares of Cole Kmet, but I'm not hugely interested in either of the others. Just Sam Laporta.
Yeah, completely agree. I don't think I want to touch that Packers tight end room. It's too many question marks. It's the same as the wide receiver room. I think maybe you take one sort of late round flyer if you get into that point where you might need one. But ultimately, I don't think I'm going to have any shares of that that tight end room. Agree with you with Cole Kmet. I think he was screaming value, and then they draft Romidunze, and then they brought in Keenan Allen and stuff, and all of a sudden you go, wow, your receptions are getting smaller and smaller by the day, so what role have you got to play in this offense? TJ Hawkinson I worry for. I think Kirk Cousins was there. I would be keen for him, but I think he's dropping down my rankings at the moment. So, and Sam Laporta is just Sam Laporta. He turns up, does his job, and he's phenomenal,
he's so far clear of the other tight ends in this division, and I'm not even 100% sure when TJ Hawkinson's going to be back from his injury, because it was a really nasty one.
I'm not sure, but any other players did you want to mention before we finish?
I think the Bears running back room is still quite interesting to me, because with DeAndre Swift given a lot of money, but we were quite happy with it as Khalil Herbert and Roshan Johnson. So I just wouldn't be surprised it's one of them, like, say, for example, Miles Sanders last year, that I just wouldn't be surprised if they bring a guy in for big money and he ends up not being the starter. I really like Khalil Herbert. and Roshan Johnson as prospects. I mean, I like DeAndre Swift as a prospect, but like, I just wouldn't be surprised if it ends up with the highest value one not being the starter after a few weeks.
So when I ask you if there's anyone else you want to talk about, the guy that I told you that I like earlier,
Yeah.
you basically just shit on. Great. What a way to finish the show, eh?
I think Pickens a good name, though.
Thanks, Lewis. I really appreciate you, mate. And with that, that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow us on X at Wildcard Rewind, and head over to our YouTube channel. Search for @Fantasy Wildcard and make sure you like and subscribe. And join us next week where we go into another division.